Well, now on to our main program to introduce our guest speakers, and we have two of them this evening. It's our first Vice President of Programs, David Lamb.
Hello everyone, so I am the first Vice President for the San Marino City Club. I'm extremely excited about the great turnout we have tonight and extremely excited about tonight's program. I do have to admit, however, that tonight is a little bit bittersweet for me. Reason being is that people say we all make bad choices in life. I'm an A's fan. So, unfortunately, the 1988 Game 1 World Series home run by Kirk Gibson represents probably one of the low points in my life. One of which I get reminded of about once every couple of weeks as I watch Fox Sports West and they show like the greatest moment in LA sports history. From that side, not from the other side. So tonight, I'm hoping to exercise some demons, and I'm hoping that if I'm able to see that same play again, but with a different setting, different set of friends, and different broadcast, that potentially it ends in a much better experience for me. So Jaime Harin has graciously agreed to re-announce the 1988 World Series home run call, and I'm hoping that I feel better after this. So,
I hope you can understand it.
Excuse me a second.
As you can see, Gibson is not ready. Estando en la rusa, Gibson asks for time, está pidiendo tiempo.
En español. En la manera.
Bueno, este es el momento culminante en el juego de esta noche. Primero vamos a hacer el movimiento de 1988. Los Atléticos de Oakland y los Dodgers de Los Ángeles, Dodger Stadium. Bateando Kirk Gibson. Tiene las señas de lanzamiento, viene batazo profundo al jardín derecho. La pelota se va y despídela con un beso. Se fue el cuadrangular de los Dodgers de Los Ángeles. Dejan en el terreno a los Atléticos de Oakland. Y gana la dramática victoria de los Dodgers de Los Ángeles, viniendo desde atrás. Los Dodgers toman la delantera en la serie, una victoria en un juego.
There you go.
So unfortunately, that didn't make me feel any better. But as much as that moment did hurt, what hurt even more was what happened a couple weeks ago when my daughters announced their sports loyalty. So before I announce the two speakers for tonight's event, I do want to extend a special thanks out to Tom Stanley for putting me in touch with Jorge and Jaime Harin. Without his contributions, we might not have a speaker tonight. So, Tom, thank you so much. So part of my job as first vice president is to collect information to use as part of the speaker's bio. For this particular event, I was fortunate in that the job was done for me by the LA Dodgers. So on May 25th, 2013, Jaime Harin was honored by the Dodger Stadium with his own bobblehead doll. There are very few individuals that can claim this honor. let alone have 50,000 bobblehead dolls made of themselves. So, truly an amazing accomplishment. So I'm going to read you some highlights off of the bobblehead doll box. Jaime Herrin is currently in his 57th season as the Spanish language broadcaster for the Dodgers. He was inducted into the National Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown as the recipient of the Forrest C. Frick Award. From 1962 to 1984, he called close to 4,000 consecutive games spanning 22 seasons. He has called 19 MLB All-Star games and 25 World Championships. Our second speaker is Jaime Herrin, Jaime's son and broadcast partner, Jorge Herrin. Sorry about that. Jorge has been on the airwaves for almost 35 years. He started his career at KABC as a helicopter reporter, receiving several awards for his efforts promoting carpooling and ride-sharing and lobbying for mandatory seatbelt laws. It was here that he earned the nickname Captain Jorge. In 2012, Jorge teamed up with former LA Dodgers left fielder Manny Mota, doing Spanish language telecasts of Dodger games for Fox Deportes, and he also co-hosted the Dodger Talk radio postgame show on KLAC with Kevin Kennedy and David Bassett. In 2015, he teamed up with his father on the Dodgers radio broadcast on KTNQ. Now, what isn't in their traditional bio, however, is the strong connection the Herrin family has had with the San Marino community. Jaime Herrin moved his family to San Marino in 1965. He has lived in the same residence ever since. His son Jorge is a proud product of the San Marino schools, San Marino Unified Schools Districts, and is a member of the Stoneman class of 1965. He is also a member of the Huntington class of 1969, San Marino High School class of 1973, where he played the lead role of Tevye in Fiddler on the Roof. So, without further ado, Jorge and Jaime Herrin.
Thank you, David. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Buenas noches a todos ustedes. It is indeed a great pleasure for me to be here tonight with you. I have vision that somebody has to do something special in order to be here with you tonight. He did the same thing a few years ago. I am talking about my good neighbors, Berta and Tam. To you, thank you very much. There is nothing like having good neighbors. It has been a great drive for me to be in front of a microphone and to carry the Dodger games in my language, Spanish, since 1959. I am going into my 58th season with the Dodgers. Let me tell you, I started when I was 2 years old. But it has been a great, great ride, especially this year when Jorge joined me on the radio. It is unbelievable. It is really a blessing to have him with me, especially on the road. He takes care of me. I take care of him. We have dinner together almost every night. So I am paying him back for the time that I was away so much during my career with the Dodgers. Jorge, thank you very much. I know you want to say a few words.
Yeah, he says the word he's paying me back. Believe me, folks. That includes not only having him as a broadcast partner and a great example, but also being his driver, his valet, his dinner companion, and such. Never in my wildest imagination did I ever believe that at my age I would be spending as much time now as I do with my father, and that truly is a real blessing. But it's, thank you. But first, before we get started, because David has, I have to tell you, I'm very impressed with the way when all of this came about, David's attention to detail and his meeting with us, talking with us, interviewing us to put together as interesting a program for you tonight wouldn't be possible without the efforts that David has put forth. And it's great to be back to see so many familiar faces. I see our neighbors, Mr. Downer and the Santleys, of course, and I have fond memories of this room because right over there against that wall where it says San Marino Community Leadership, I remember in the 8th grade graduation dance that night, standing against that wall for an hour and a half before I finally got enough courage to ask Gail Davis to dance. And I think the imprints from my fingers and my palms are still against that wall. But it is truly great to be back here in our community. And this is especially gratifying, and it's especially nice. Fortunately, because of our association with the Dodgers, there are several occasions where we're asked to participate at different events and such and speak, especially my father. But to be here tonight in the community that I grew up in, where I lived since 1965, Stoneman and Huntington and the high school before going on to college, it's really, really nice. So thank you all so much for this turnout tonight. I know that you have a number of questions that we thought that's what we would do.
Before we continue, let me say that I am extremely pleased to have my other son, Mauricio, here with us.
Yes.
Mauricio is the only one in my family that has the genes of my ancestors. He's a farmer in Escondido, near San Diego. So great to have you, Mauricio, here tonight. Thank you.
Good.
Why don't I switch mics with this one?
And I'll pass this to him.
So given the fact that we've got two great speakers tonight, we are changing the format from what is traditionally a presentation format to an interview format instead. I will serve as the MC, and Jorge and Jaime will take turns answering questions for about 15 minutes or so. I do have questions that can last about 6 hours, but we will stop at 15 minutes. So here we go. The first question is a Dodger-focused question. In March of 2012, the Los Angeles Dodgers were acquired by the Guggenheim Partners for around $2 billion. Can you talk a little bit about the transition and what that's been like?
Well, I have been with the Dodgers for 57 years, and I have been through 4 ownerships. The O'Malley family, the ownership of the Dodgers for many, many years. They were an example of a first-class organization, the family concept. But then they had to sell the ball club because they couldn't come up with enough money. The new ball players were making tons of money, and Mr. O'Malley thought that it was impossible for him to be able to afford that, being as a family operation business. So he sold the team to Fox. We were under Fox for 5 years, and let me tell you, those were, to me, the lowest years of the Dodgers, because Fox didn't pay enough attention to the Dodgers. Even though the Dodgers have been, along with the Yankees, the jewel of baseball, for an empire as big as Fox. We were very tiny, 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 so they didn't care about baseball. They didn't care about the Dodgers. It was a constant parade of young girls with miniskirts at the ballpark. They're doing nothing. So it was the lowest period, I will say, for the Dodgers. Then the Fox sold the team to Mr. Frank McCourt. McCourt came without any money in his pockets. Nobody knows how Major League Baseball allowed him to buy a club without any money. He bought a team with just loans from Fox, from Bank of America, and you name it. The first 4 years, he was a good owner. He tried, and he again put the Dodgers as a family-oriented organization. But the last 2 years was a complete disaster. You know why? Because of the divorce. If he had covered up that, I think he will still be owning the Dodgers. So he was forced to sell the ball club to the actual owners. They came up with $2 billion. Everybody said, my goodness, $2 billion, how is possible? They were very smart. They paid $2 billion. In a year and a half, they got $8 billion for the TV rights only. So they are genius in the business field, and they have hired people, baseball people, to be in charge of the club. So we are really in a very, very good hands with the actual ownership with the Dodgers. I think they have the most important thing, which is money. They have plenty of money, and they have people that knows really the business.
Just real quickly. Just very quickly, prior to my joining the broadcast this last year and previous 2 years doing the Dodger games on television, I joined the Dodgers back in 2004. Mr. Santley was elected president of the San Marino City Club, I may remind you. And in that year, I joined the Dodgers as manager of Spanish broadcast sales. So my job was to handle the business side of the broadcast, the gathering of affiliates, building our affiliate network, the radio network, the business side, and signing sponsorships and clients on the broadcast. And you know, I joined at the same time that the McCourts came aboard, and as my father said, the first 4 years, Frank McCourt's heart was in the right place and meant to do when you think of some of the things that were accomplished during that time, we set an attendance baseball record at the Coliseum when we had a game against the Boston Red Sox, and all the proceeds went to fight cancer. That was 108,000 people, 115,000, excuse me, back in, 2009, when Manny, right before 2008. And, you know, there was a lot of emphasis in trying to give back to the community. So there's some very good things that occurred during that time. But as my father said, the last 2 years, working with sponsors, telling them when the team went into bankruptcy, that was the lowest point you could possibly have morale-wise, internally. They were so consumed with the divorce that no one was really paying attention what was going on day to day in the office, and we were like kids in a divorce where they're kind of, you know, the parents are off dealing with their lawyers and the kids are running around crazy in the house, and that's the way it was at Dodger Stadium. It was tough for a lot of our sponsors who had been with us for so many years to let them know, look, you know, you will get all your money. You will receive it, but we're not asking you to take 50 cents on the dollar like in other bankruptcies or something like that. But you have to give us time, and that was the hardest thing. And for employees and the morale, it was really, really tough. And I think those who have been there all that time have really proven themselves as being one of the best front offices around. And I just quickly just want to say that and I told this to Stan Kasten and Magic Johnson the first time I met them, that when they came, it was like right out of one of those John Wayne Westerns. You know, the wagons were circled, the arrows were flying, they were out of bullets, the Indians were coming in. And here comes the cavalry off in the distance. Da, 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 da. And that was the Guggenheim Group. When they appeared, and you knew that all of a sudden, we went from being bankrupt to being the richest team in all of baseball overnight in one season. And that in itself is amazing. And it talks about the value of this franchise and the history of it. So, anyways, next.
So, Jaime, you were honored with your own bobblehead giveaway in 2013. What was that moment like for you? And then, Jorge, do you have any thoughts from that day as well?
Could you, I couldn't hear very well.
You were honored with your own bobblehead giveaway in 2013. What was that moment like for you?
It was really a very exciting night. I will say that probably for me, it is the second most important night. The first one is without a doubt the day that I was inducted into the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, 1998. That was really very, very special. But when I got my bobblehead, I was so excited and humbly excited because that was not for me. It was for my family. I had everybody of my family, my immediate family, my brothers, my nephews, my sons, my grandsons at the ballpark, and they really enjoyed that. So that really, really was very, very special for me.
As far as for me, knowing that he was going, you know, I have to share my dad. He's my father, but I have to share him with the Latino community because my father, with his longevity and in the time that he has lived in Southern California and what he's accomplished, what he represents to Latinos, that night was as important for the Latino community as it was for my dad. It was an opportunity for the Dodgers to show how they value the commitment and the loyalty, because the one group, and it was interesting, from 2004 to when Guggenheim took over, we saw a steady decrease in attendance to the point that our season ticket base was down to 17,000, the lowest it had ever been. And half of those were not showing up. But the one group, through all the research and strategy, the one group, the one demographic that continued to grow through that time, a 10% increase, was a Latino Dodger fan. The Latino fan base comprises 48% of all of Dodger baseball attendance. You know, that's close to 2 million self-identified Latinos that attend Dodger baseball on a regular basis. The Dodgers have the biggest following in all of Major League Baseball when it comes to Latinos. And my father is the reason for that, because like Vin Scully, he has been there for them. So I end up sharing him. So for a lot of Latinos, I can't tell you how it was coming to the ballpark, and they were all excited to have their bobblehead, and they've also had a t-shirt night and everything, and that was the day I also decided to surprise him by doing something I'd never done before, and I thought, why not? And I sang the national anthem on that day for his bobblehead day. And I did not tell him, I did not tell my brothers, I didn't tell my mom. No one knew until the moment when they introduced me to sing the national anthem. So it was really special, but it was nerve-wracking leading up to that.
So let's ask some questions about San Marino. So, Jaime, the demographics of the city of San Marino has changed dramatically since 1965. What was San Marino like when you first arrived in 1965? And are there any key observations that you have regarding the changing demographics?
Well, before coming to San Marino, I lived in Altadena for about 4 years. Then Mauricio was on his way, so we need a bigger house. And I started looking for a place, and God sent us a lady who was around. She was a realtor, and she found this house. I went to see the house. My sisters-in-law went to see the house. My wife Blanca went to see the house, and we all fell in love with the house, and we moved in 1965. That's 50 years ago, last September. We moved in September 15, 1965, and we have been really, really blessed to be there. I have seen few changes in San Marino since 1965. Probably, well, the traffic. It wasn't this bad, you know. In 65, it was very quiet. But I think the most important thing, we didn't have in those years the centennial clock on Huntington Drive, across the street from the city hall. But the most important thing, in our street, there were lots of kids. Every family had 2, 3, 4 kids. Now we don't have a single one, not one, in La Mirada Street. Is that so, Tom? 2? Oh, I'm sorry.
Well, you have to remember that he was gone for almost 4,000 consecutive games. At that point, my brother and I are almost lucky we're still here, you know, that we even got here. But I have to tell you that we have seen a lot of changes. Never before was San Marino have as much growth as it has come from immigrants. Immigrant growth in San Marino has changed this community tremendously. When we first moved in, and this is a true story. It sounds funny, but we moved in and my father had already started. I was going to starting at Stoneman, 5th grade, and one of the first things is that my father said, "Hey, listen. It's a big house, big yard. You guys are going to have to contribute, and you're going to have a job mowing the lawn, raking leaves, things like that, like all kids do." And So there we were, the first Saturday that we were living there. This is right before the Santleys had moved in. And I was outside with my brother, and we were mowing the lawn, and this Mrs. Serini, who lived across the street, an older lady, came over and said hello, and she wanted to know if I would be interested in coming over to mow the lawn at her house. And I said, sure, I'd be happy to. She goes, how much do you charge? And I said, well, you know, we could do like, is 50 cents an hour okay, or whatever? I don't think it'll even take an hour to do it. And she said, absolutely. She goes, how often are you in the neighborhood? And I said, I can be here any day. She said, you can? I go, yeah, I live right here. She just assumed that we were the gardener's kids, you know, because back in San Marino in 1965, when we first moved in, the Latino population of San Marino was literally 2.5%, according to the school's census. They used to do this whole review of all the schools in all of Southern, and you could look it up. It was in the Times, and it said, and I remember a teacher pointing out 2.5%. My God, that must be Jorge, his brother Jim, and Mauricio, who at that time was only 6 months old. He counted for the 0.5%. So we were the 2.5% of Latinos. And, you know, for the longest time, there was no Asian students when I went to high school. There were a few Latino students, and that was it. But it's great when you have diversity. And we speak about an ever-changing community, and it's vibrant and it's alive. Look at the turnout tonight. And that is because all of you are so involved with the well-being of your community and your city. And it's something that I think we as a community still have a lot of pride in. And that's because we come from different backgrounds and we have the same types of goals in life. And we found this wonderful community and we want to preserve it the best we can. But those are basically some of the little changes that I've noticed.
So Jaime, for much of your career, you maintained an incredible work ethic. For about 210 days a year, you usually started your day at 6 in the morning and didn't get home till about 1 a.m. the following night. Having spent time with you, however, it seems that despite this incredible work schedule, you still remained extremely active in the life of your children. How is that even possible?
One answer, my wife. She is the one that really has helped me a lot to reach the level that I have reached. Without her help, without her understanding, there is no way that I could have lasted this long with the Dodgers. And really, it was tough. It was tough for me because, as you put it on, a period during probably about 6 to 8 years, I used to work. I used to open KWKW in the morning and had a show with news from 5 to 9 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, I changed to the sister station, K-Love, and I had a show called Música y Curiosidades from 10 until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I used to go out at 2 o'clock to tape commercials. As well, I was the spokesman for Sears for 15 years. I was the spokesman for Chevrolet for 18 years. So I was doing lots of commercials. Then after that, I had to go to the stadium at 5:30 in the afternoon to do the game. I did the game, get home around 11 o'clock, 11:30, 12 o'clock midnight, and I had to sit down to write an editorial for the radio station next day. So I will go to bed around 1 o'clock in the morning and get up at 4:30 in the morning. That was 6 days a week for about 8 years. I don't know how I did it, sleeping only 3 or 4 hours a day. So I don't know how I found the time to be with them, but we were very close. They were very understanding. Any minute extra that I had, I would spend with them. But Blanca is the one that took the station wagon, the kids to a park, to whatever. And I was with the Dodgers and doing the games at home and traveling with the team. It was very tough, but we managed. And but all the credit should go to my wife, Blanca.
You know, and if I can just echo that, to just because the fact of the matter is, when I think about that, and I hear that, and I hear his response, I'm struck by the fact that as we were growing up, my brothers and I never once felt neglect at all. We never, ever felt that. My mom made sure, and we also figured that if Dad wasn't around, that was one less explanation we had to give. And we only had to deal with my mom. But she made sure that we always felt that my dad was involved as far as his presence, his knowledge. He knew everything that we were doing and what we were up to, and she just made that happen. So literally, she was the glue, and it's all a credit to my mom, and it's been a great partnership. And as a result, my brother and I have great examples to live by.
So this question is directed to Jorge. Jorge, as a former San Marino High School varsity football defensive back, you obviously have been tracking the championship season of the San Marino High School football team this past fall/winter. What do you believe will be the impact on San Marino athletics and the community overall from their success?
That's a great question, because I did follow it closely, because my son, my youngest son, Stefan, also has worked as an assistant baseball coach up at San Marino. Coach Pachorik, and he works with Coach Pachorik very much, and so he knew a lot of the kids on the football team, as well as having been a part of their coaching on the baseball team. And so he kept me up, and I started going to the games when they started to, winning and everything. I was up in Azusa when they had that great win there, and I think the important thing, and it's been well spoken about tonight, it's documented, but the thing that I think is so important is I hope the community really appreciates what this means for the community, the impact that it has on the community. And by that specifically is that when you can offer not only a great academic education that San Marino has had a long-standing reputation for. I mean, one of the reasons I went to college is because of the fact that when I went to San Marino here, it was always assumed that you would go on to college. And that was instilled from a young age, from all the way from the middle school on up to the high school. But the thing is that now we've given parents more of a reason not to have to consider private schools like St. Francis and Loyola and other schools, because not only is your son or daughter a good student, but they're also looking for that possibility of gaining an athletic scholarship as well. Because we all know that athletic programs covet not only good athletes, but ones who will maintain eligibility for them, because they're making an investment in that student, and that student needs to stay eligible. Well, that happens with kids coming out of San Marino. So now I think that we'll also attract a better caliber of student and family to keep their kids in San Marino schools, and that just adds to the overall experience in shaping that young person. So it's a win-win situation all the way around.
So follow-up question. How does this team compare to any of the other teams that you have personally seen?
Without a doubt, it's by far the best. I mean, I remember hearing about the 1955 team, and there was another team in 1968 that also went far, and of course the 1988 team that I think was coached by Bill Maloney that also had great success. But when you think of what the young athlete is now able to do, and the level of competition, the level of training, not only that, but the amount of schoolwork and how they have to learn to balance all their responsibilities. This is by far, to me, the accomplishment of this team is got to be the greatest of all time for this community.
This question is for Jaime. Jaime, in addition to your work with the Dodgers, you have covered a number of historical events, such as the Gorilla in Manila, the funeral of JFK, Pope John Paul's visit to America, and serving as translator to Fernando Valenzuela during the height of Fernando Mania. Of all these events, what was the most challenging assignment that you have covered?
Well, my professional life is a book of 2 chapters. The first chapter is when I was more than a sportscaster, a newsman. When I came to this country, I came with experience as a newsman, as a journalist. I worked in Quito for 4 years I was the official announcer for the National Congress of Ecuador for 4 years before coming to this country. So when I came here and I got a job with KW, my first duty was to form a solid news department. And I was able to do that. Then I was very, very fortunate to be assigned, to get assignments to very important news events. For instance, and probably this is the most difficult assignment that I have ever received, was going to cover the funeral of President Kennedy. 1963, remember, my English was very limited, it still is. And the owner of the station calls me and said, Jaime, go to the airport. There is a ticket in your name. I want you to go to Washington and I want you to cover the funeral of President Kennedy. Wow. So I went to the airport, picked up the ticket, flew to Washington. I arrived in Washington at 7 o'clock in the morning. It was raining. It was very cold. No soul in the streets. Only soldiers with machine guns on every intersection. And I said, what do I do here? I didn't have anything with me. So the first thing that I thought was go to Mr. Ed Roy Ball. Roy Ball was the first councilman in Los Angeles, Mexican-American councilman in Los Angeles. And he was the first Mexican-American member of the Congress in Washington. He knew me because I used to cover the city hall here. And so I went to see him. When he saw me, he said, what are you doing here, Jaime? I said, I came to cover the funeral. He said, what do you need? I said, everything. And he assigned one of his field deputies to be with me. He picked up the phone. He called I don't know who. In 30 minutes, I had all the credentials needed. I had a Jeep with a radio man, with a chauffeur. And 20 minutes before Mrs. Kennedy came in the rotunda to kneel in front of the body with his son and Bob Kennedy, I was broadcasting from 20 feet away. Then I broadcast the initial of the procession to the cathedral, San Marcos Cathedral, and I jumped into the Jeep, went to the cathedral. I was there waiting for the procession to arrive. Then I described everything. Jumped into the Jeep, went to the Arlington Cemetery, and I was there waiting for them to arrive at the cemetery. That was the most difficult job that I have ever done, and the most fulfilling, really, job. Then I have had so many other things. I was in 3 presidential meetings, López Mateos of Mexico with Richard Nixon, then Díaz Ordaz with Nixon in Colorado, in Coronado, and in Puerto Vallarta. I was with President Johnson when the United States gave back to Mexico a portion of land called El Chamizal. I was in New York when the Pope arrived the first time in the United States. This is unbelievable. The first hijack in the United States, one of the first hijacks of airplanes, hijacks in the United States, it was a Mexican fellow, Ricardo Chavez Ortiz, who hijacked an airplane, Frontier Airlines in New Mexico, and he commanded the pilot to bring 56 passengers to Los Angeles. So the FBI calls me, and he said, are you Mr. Jarin? I said, yes, Jaime Jarin. And he said, there was a hijack of an airplane. The plane is coming to Los Angeles, and the condition that he put it to release the passengers was to have a meeting with you. At the beginning, I was excited. He said, are you willing to come with us to the airport? I said, sure, of course. So they sent a helicopter to pick me up at the parking lot of KWKW in Pasadena, and went to the international airport. During the flight to the airport, the pilot said, are you married? I said, yes. He said, do you have kids? Yes, I have 3. He said, if I were you, I wouldn't go to that plane. I said, why? That's a condition. He said, he could be your admirer, he could be your listener, he could be your friend, or he could be your enemy. He could have something against you, and he could greet you with a bullet between your eyes. And that shook me up, and I got nervous. But we landed at the airport, and the head of the FBI said, "You will be the last resource for us." So they told him they were in contact. He had landed here, the plane, and they were in contact, the tower with the plane, and they told Ortiz, "I'm sorry, we can't locate Mr. Harin. He is on vacation." He said, No. I heard him last night. He is here. Said, "No, he's not, but his assistant is here. I want him. Finally, they convinced him that I wasn't there. So that was one episode that I will never forget. Later on, I met him. He was sentenced to life in prison, and I met him. And as soon as he saw me, he kissed my hand. He was weird. He was crazy. He was crazy. But that was one really fantastic experience for me to have, you know.
But tell him why he wanted to talk to you, because of the sponsorship.
So I asked him, I said, "Why did you ask for me?" Because I didn't know him, he didn't know me. He said, I used to have a big news at 6 p.m. every afternoon, every night. Big news, 1 hour news. He said, "I used to listen to you every single day at 6 o'clock. And one day I wrote you a letter, and you never answered the letter." I said, "Are you sure that you sent me a letter?" He said, "Yes, it was 10 pages long." That took me. I remember receiving a letter, a long, long letter. And at the beginning, he said, "I want you to help me to get a sponsor because I want to go rowing from Los Angeles to Sydney, Australia." And I said, "He's a crazy guy," so I threw away the letter. So that was the reason why he called me and he asked me. Well, he asked for two people. He asked for me and for a sergeant of the LA Police Department who used to draw, you know, the faces of suspects. So he asked for the two. There was a sergeant by the last name, I think it was Lopez and myself. So, but then I saw him after trial, and he used to write me from prison. I think he was released after 30 years, I think, and deported to Mexico.
So Jorge, what was your recollection of your father's coverage of those stories?
Well, you know, this is 1963, so at that point I was in the second grade, and I really couldn't really get a full grasp of what was going on, other than that it was a tragic event, that there was no cartoons on television, that it was just all this somber coverage. And I remember the one thing is because my father also, from there, you also did a follow-up by going to Dallas, and you were in Dallas as well. So while he was in Dallas, I asked me to bring me home some cowboy boots. So I got my cowboy boots when he came back, and I wore those cowboy boots, and for some reason my mom thought, "Oh my gosh, this is great. You know, you go through shoes and stuff like that, these cowboy boots, they'll last forever." So I got stuck wearing cowboy boots to school before I came to San Marino. Every single day wearing cowboy boots. You know, even with short pants, it looks kind of funny. But the worst was when you had PE at recess, and they would say, "Today we're going to time you in the 50-yard dash." Trying to run the 50-yard dash in cowboy boots looks like a penguin trying to run down the roadway. So, but I remember specifically how my dad was away, and he came back, and he brought me back my cowboy boots.
So Jorge, in your long career as a helicopter reporter, were there any scary moments that are noteworthy?
Well, yes. You know, there's bound to be. I mean, the fact is that, you know, considering my job was to spend 5 hours a day, 5 days a week, airborne in a helicopter, covering traffic primarily, and then anything else that happened to occur that was noteworthy for KABC, because KABC is a talk radio station. So, you know, I was there during the Rodney King riots, and watching that, what was unfolding below us, was pretty frightening, and then coming to the realization that, heaven forbid, if we ever had to make an emergency or forced landing at that time, the LAPD could not ensure our safety or their ability to get to us, number one. There was, on occasion, because, you know, I was reporting on traffic accidents. There are more accidents happening down there, and I felt sorry for people because they were driving. You were in more danger than I was being in a helicopter. Helicopter's a very, very safe apparatus, really, when you think about it, more so than a fixed-wing airplane. But things do happen, and one time, and I don't talk too much about this because my mom gets, you know, she and my dad were really happy when I finally hung up my helicopter wings, you might say, and went to work for the Dodgers. But there was a time, you know, when you're flying for long periods of time, at that time, the way things worked out, I was the reporter and I had a pilot with me. And I remember one time we were flying up the 605 freeway. We're about 1,300 feet above the 605, right around the area of Whittier Boulevard. And I noticed that all of a sudden the helicopter kind of nosed over and we started descending. And I looked down and I didn't see any accident. So I turned over to look to my pilot and he had fallen asleep. You know, you think about it. You're driving for 3 hours or 4 hours straight at a time. Sometimes you get a case of the drowsiness and everything. And I grabbed him right away. And he pulled up, and of course, and I just told him, I said, hey, Scott, listen, we can't have this. An understatement if ever there was one. I said, we can't do this. I said, look, I understand this, the limitations and everything. If you get tired, here's what we're going to do. Because Scott, everyone that I flew with, they were all what's referred to as a CFI, Certified Flight Instructor. I said, I'll make you a deal. You guys teach me and help me learn how to fly this helicopter, and then anytime you need to take a 15, 20-minute catnap break, I'm fine. I can fly, I can get us down, I can whatever, but I just don't want to have to do it for 5 hours, talking to towers and watching traffic, and then listening for my cues to do the traffic, and talk to the shows, the hosts and such. So I didn't want to have to do that for 5 hours, but I could do it for 15, 20 minutes, and then we could go back to the way we do things. So we did that, and that worked out very well. And then one other time. And I'll just real quickly, I'll tell you, it's funny. I was flying with this young man. His name was Aldo Bentavenia. And I had flown with him for a full year. And we flying every day. And one day I said, Aldo, I want to fly over my old high school campus. It's a little community called San Marino, and I'll show you how to get there. I want to circle over, take some pictures. He goes, oh, I know where San Marino is. And I go, you do? Because most people don't know where San Marino is. He goes, no, I know. I went to high school there. Are you kidding me? He goes, no, I went to high school. I go, so did I. And the odds that the two of us, a San Marino graduate, was my pilot at that time. It turned out that he had gone to school with my brother Mauricio, a good friend of Mauricio. He did not make the connection because, you know, when someone calls me and says, is George Jaron there? I know it's someone from high school. Okay? Because my name was always translated for me when I was in school here. So after all that, and when I got married, I remember my wife and friends and stuff, they'd ask my wife, why did your husband change his name? I never changed my name. It's just I never insisted on how you all would pronounce it properly. But anyways, I was with Aldo, and we had taken off from Van Nuys Airport. We were just climbing, and we were over the 405, full load of fuel, ready for 3 hours. And for whatever reason, a rivet broke in the compressor and got sucked through the compressor and through the engine, and the whole engine exploded. And we're about 1,000 feet, and we lose the engine. And all of a sudden, that moment, I've always thought about what would happen. And all the little red lights on the dashboard come up, and the little beep, 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 and you start calling the tower saying you're going down. And Fortunately, Aldo did a really great job of doing an auto rotation, and we did a hard landing in a vacant field across from the Anheuser-Busch Brewery. And fortunately, because the real danger is when you come down hard, it's those helicopter blades that are turning. They do the most damage to the helicopter, or if it flips over. And we stayed upright. We were able to walk away from this forced landing, came down hard. Of course, the helicopter was done until they could get it checked out and everything again. And so at that point, we're okay and everything, and then we're waiting for this big flatbed truck to come and put the helicopter on the flatbed to drive it back to the airport. And it was about 11 o'clock. This happened at 5 o'clock in the morning. At 11 o'clock, we're still sitting there waiting, and then all of a sudden I hear here comes the fire department. And they showed up at about 11 o'clock, said, guys, you're about 5 hours too late. Somehow they didn't get the call until all of a sudden someone said, hey, this helicopter went down. But they showed up, but everything was okay at that point. But, other than that, and then unfortunately, right after the Northridge earthquake, Vin Scully's son was killed in a helicopter crash. He was an engineer for an oil company. And he had been sent up with a pilot to inspect the oil lines coming over from the Central Valley into the San Fernando Valley. And they flew into some high-tension power lines, and Vin's son was killed. And that afternoon, unfortunately, these quick sound bites, Tom Brokaw came on Channel 4, and all he said was, Dodger broadcaster's son killed in helicopter crash, news at 11. And that's all they said. They didn't say Vin Scully, they just said Dodger broadcaster. Well, at that time, everyone thought, well, Jorge's in the helicopter every day, and Dodger broadcaster. It just panicked my family. My mom got calls, and she didn't know. My dad for a moment. And I said, no, it's not me. I'm okay. But unfortunately, it was Vin's son that was killed that way.
So, Jaime and Jorge, what was it like teaming up as broadcast partners for the first time in 2015?
You want to go? Well, for me, actually, it was, my father likes to use the word unbelievable a lot. And in that case, I use it too. It really was something that I really had not planned on or thought about. My father was a great example when I first got my first opportunity to do play-by-play on television. And, when I was approached, and they said that the Dodgers wanted to make some changes. They wanted to move Fernando and my dad's partner currently with Fernando to the TV side. And if I would I be open to moving over and joining my dad? And I thought, oh my God, puts us in the same league as Joe and Jack Buck, and and Harry Carey and his grandson Chip, and there's only been, I think, 3 or 4 occasions where you've had 2 family members in the same broadcast, much less father and son. So it was an opportunity not only to, once again, the Dodgers are always been at the forefront of being the first and doing a lot of things, and here it was it was an honor and everything, but I also realized that I would be working with a Hall of Famer who happened to be my dad, who would watch out for me, but at the same time, he's listening to every word I'm saying. And my father, up until that moment, I had realized, I had always known this, but I knew that he has established a benchmark that got him elected into the Hall of Fame at Cooperstown, and now, somehow, I got to try and live up to that. And it was an adjustment. I think I was pretty hard on myself in the beginning. My dad told me to relax, to be myself, but he also made it real clear to me of the difference between doing play-by-play on television and doing play-by-play on radio. Radio is much more challenging. The radio, you have to be so much more descriptive. As my father would say to me, he says, Jorge, these people have been working all day, and they need 2 or 3 hours to distract them from life's problems and things that bother them, and they look forward to enjoying, and you are going to be their eyes and their ears. So that's a huge responsibility, and it requires every day. It starts for a 7 o'clock broadcast, I start doing my homework at about noon. Right after lunch, everything becomes focused on that night's broadcast, the teams that are coming, who they are, what they've done, what's going on with them, what are the stories regarding them, and of course, our ongoing stories, because the story continues to evolve every day with each individual player. So you recap what happened yesterday, tonight, and where they're moving, where they're going to.
For me, it has been really a blessing to have Jorge alongside in the booth. That brought me to my mind the fact that when I came to this country, I had never seen a baseball game in my life. I come from Quito, Ecuador, where they don't play baseball at all. They play baseball in Guayaquil, but in Quito, nothing. I have never seen a baseball, a bat, or a mitt, or a glove, nothing, until I arrived into this country. I arrived here in 1955, exactly the same day that Sandy Koufax pitched his first game in the major leagues, June 24th, 1955. By the end of the year, 1955, I got a job at KWKW. From June until December, I couldn't find a job on radio. I had to work in a factory making metal fences. But at the end of 55, I was able to start working for KWKW, first a couple hours on Saturday, doing a music show from a record store in Alhambra, then doing news Sunday, then little by little they increased my hours. So in 1955, at the World Series in New York, it was the Yankees against the Dodgers. And in Los Angeles, I saw so many people around TV sets, around radio receivers, watching this game. Every window of a business in Los Angeles, along 7th Street, Broadway Street, every window has a TV set there, watching this game, the game in New York. And I said to myself, this must be a great game, because so many people are watching the game. So I inquired around, and they said, this game is called baseball. It's the pastime of the United States. So I was all very sports-minded. So I said, I have to find out. So I started going to the Gilmore Field and to the Wrigley Field to watch the AAA teams. We had two AAA teams here in Los Angeles, the Hollywood Stars and the Los Angeles Angels. So I went on weekends to watch those games. So I started getting familiarized with the baseball. And in 1958, the Dodgers decided to move from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. And one day, the owner of KWKW called all the employees to his office to give us the great news that he got the rights to do the games in Spanish. I was then doing boxing from the Olympic Auditorium every Thursday night. And he said, I need 2 announcers. And looking at me, he said, Jaime, I want you to be one of the 2 announcers. And I said, Mr. Beaton, I'm sorry. Now I know something about baseball, but I don't think I am qualified to be in front of a microphone and to describe the game. I'm sorry, I can't do it. He said, he liked me very much. I was very young. He said, Jaime, there's a future for you there. I want you there. I'm going to give you 1 year. I want you to be ready next year. So that 58, I started reading every book about baseball, listening every broadcast of a baseball game. So 1959, I was ready to start, and I started in 1959. When I started with the Dodgers, I thought it would be a matter of 6, 7, 8 years doing the games. I was doing boxing a lot. I was doing world championship fights. I did a Manila Thriller from Manila. Fraser and Muhammad Ali. I did a Monson Napoles fight in Paris. I did a Monzon Benvenuti 3 fights, one in Monte Carlo, one in Rome, one in Milano. And I did countless of fights. All the Mexican champions here, the 60s were the golden, really, years of boxing in Southern California. So I did all the championship fights here. So I was doing boxing a lot. But I said, baseball, I will do 6, 7, 8 years. TV in Spanish was Jesus started in 1963. So I said that I would move to television. Eventually I did. I was for 8 years the sports director of Channel 52 Telemundo, but to be honest with you, I didn't like television work at all. I have always been a radio man since I was 15 years old. I was 15 years old back in Ecuador when I became an announcer. I was 17 years old when I was the official announcer of the National Congress. So really, when I came to this country, it was because I became a good friend of the American consul in Quito. And one day I told him, half kidding, half serious, I would like to go to the United States. He thought that I would like to come as a tourist. He said, oh, no problem. What do you want, 30 days, 6 months, or 1 year, whatever? I said, no, no, no. I want to go there as an immigrant. I said, really? This was Sunday night. I was the announcer for a #1 program on the radio station. So he said, come to see me on Tuesday. I went to see him on Tuesday. I had been recently married. So he said, are you sure you want to come to the United States? I said, yes. It took me more time to go through the physicals than to get my visa as an immigrant to the United States, and a visa for Blanca, also for my wife. So I came without really knowing anybody. The most difficult thing for an immigrant when you come as an adult is the language. The language barrier is the most difficult thing. For an immigrant, the perfect age is when you are 8, 9, 10 years old. You already know your language, and you will go to school and you learn the other language here at school. But when you come 18, 19, 20 years old, it is very difficult. And besides, I didn't know nobody here. I didn't have any job openings, nothing like that. I just came, and God has been so great with me. I have been so blessed, and this country is unique. There is no, I have been all over the world. I have been in all over the world. But there is not a single country as beautiful, as great as the United States of America. I love this country.
Maybe a couple of questions from the audience. Jorge, do you still have any dance moves from Fiddler on the Roof
That I'd be willing to demonstrate? Yeah, you saw that earlier. This is something that's followed me around for a long time. I think the one thing that I remember in 1972, when I was a junior and I got the lead, this was only like 26 inches now, and I used to have to wear a pillow padding for Tevye, because Tevye did the little, you know, if I were a rich man type of move. And now I don't think I would need a pillow for that, unfortunately. But I remember the last, you know, there was in If I Were a Rich Man, the last part, God who made the lion and the lamb, you decreed I should be what I am. Would it spoil some vast eternal plan if I were a wealthy man? That's what it was, but you know, I still get a kick out of that, and my friends remind me and everything. So there was a lot of tummy shaking and everything, but that's a long, long time ago, and we'll leave it at that. So I think you wanted to have questions from the audience?
do you want those one?
You need to talk about, hope to talk about Fernando Mania and how important that was to you and to Dodger fans and the times that surrounded that.
Fernando Mania was something that we will never see again. That year, 1981, was unbelievable. It helped me a lot because by then I was very well known here in Southern California. But nobody knew about Jaime Jarrín in New York, Chicago, Dallas, Miami. When I became Fernando's interpreter, well, they started realizing who, and that helped me a lot in my career, and probably that played a big part in my going into the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. Fernando Mania was very, very, very special. Fernando joined the Dodgers in 1980, and he was a member of the bullpen. He was just an average pitcher because he used to throw a curveball. His fastball was at the most probably 87, 88 miles per hour. So he joined us in Houston. He didn't pitch in that series in Houston. Then from there we moved to Atlanta. In Atlanta, he came to a game that we were losing already. The first batter that he faced was the catcher Bruce Benedict, and he hit a fly ball to center field. Anyway, Fernando pitched in about 9 games, didn't allow any runs. The season was over. 1981, in the spring training of 81, he was named the number 3 starter for the Dodgers. Opening night, Dodger Stadium. Jerry Royce was supposed to start the game, and he hurt himself during batting practice. Burt Hutton was next, so Hutton was going to pitch, but he twisted his ankle running in the outfield. I think everything was really set up for Fernando to come in. So Fernando was warming up in the bullpen without knowing that he was going to pitch. Suddenly they called the bullpen and said, "Fernando, get ready, you are going to start the game." So he started the game, and he started what it became the most fantastic season for any pitcher. He was 10-0 with 5 shutouts. The key was the fact that he learned how to pitch the screwball. Another pitcher for the Dodgers, Babo Castillo, knew how to pitch the screwball, and Al Campanis said, "Fernando needs another pitch. He can't go just fastball and curveball." So he asked Babo Castillo to teach him the screwball, and Fernando, in 10 days, he picked up the pitch. And he became another pitcher, really. The people fell in love with him. I think that was because several factors played in that. The fact that he was 19 years old. He couldn't speak a word of English. He was a little bit chubby, Indian features, and long hair. That, I think, made him what he was then. And the fact that the way that he was pitching, it was unbelievable. The people fell in love here. And not only here, everywhere we went, it was fantastic. In Chicago, we went to Chicago, and they were averaging between 21 and 23,000 people. When they announced that Fernando was going to pitch, they sold out the place. It was 39,000 people that night. That was the first night that Fernando was hit hard. By the 6th inning, he was losing the game 6-1. In the 4th inning, a small second baseman by the name Mike Tyson, like the boxer, he hit a 3-run home run of Fernando. That was it. That was the first time that Fernando didn't finish a game. La Sorda took him out in the 7th inning. We lost the game. And when Fernando pitched, I was supposed to go down after the 8th inning to help him translating. So he had to leave the game. We lost the game. So I didn't bother going downstairs. But right away the phone rang and said, "Jaime, come down, we need you. I said, "Okay." So I went down. Fernando had already iced the elbow, because on every game like Koufax, after pitching, they put in ice the elbow for about 20 to 30 minutes. So Fernando had already done that. He was in street clothes, and they said, please tell Fernando to go out to the field to wave to the people, because they were 25,000 people chanting, Fernando, Fernando. They didn't want it to leave the ballpark, Wrigley Field. The game has ended about 45 minutes ago, and they were still in. So Fernando said, no, I am not going to. I said, Fernando, look, you don't have to say anything. Just go out, wave to the people so they can go home. That's what he had to go out, and it was unbelievable. We went to New York. In New York, we used to go, when he had to pitch the first game of a new series in other city, we will go ahead of the team one day. Fernando, Mike Brito, and myself. We went to New York, and there was announced a press conference at Shea Stadium. I hate that place. Shea Stadium, and there were about 150 newsmen there. And they were so rough with Fernando, but he never failed in his answers. He was always, he couldn't speak English, but he was very sharp, very, very intelligent. He never avoided any question. He would always answer it, and it was a madhouse at Shea Stadium that night in New York. The only time that I saw Fernando nervous was when we went to the White House in Washington. Going from the airport to the city, he saw the monuments, the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Monument. He really, really was surprised to see those buildings in Washington. Then they put us in a presidential suite at the Hyatt Hotel in Washington. It was unbelievable. The penthouse, we had a suite with 3 bedrooms, 10 TV sets, and a huge Mexican sombrero in the middle of the room, full of cheese and fruit and everything. And really, Fernando couldn't believe it. That was the first time that I saw him really, really shook up. Then, the most beautiful experience that I will never forget is the fact that at the White House, after the lunch, it was a line of people waiting for Fernando to sign a baseball. Do you know who was online? President Reagan, George Bush Sr., who was then Vice President, Alexander Haig, who was the Secretary of State, Weinberger was Secretary of Defense, the Attorney General was there, senators and congressmen in line waiting for a signature of this 20-year-old kid. No English, no nothing, but that I couldn't believe it. Coming to the dining room, they had the Marine Corps band playing the most beautiful arrangements of very well-known Mexican songs. Cielito Lindo, México Lindo y Querido, but what arrangements, that really shook me up. It was quite an experience to be at the White House. Even though I had been there before, I was with President Nixon for 3 days at the White House. But still, that experience with Fernando at the White House was unique, unique, unique.
Any other questions?
I think we have room for maybe one question before.
The lady over there.
Maria?
Well, actually 2 parts. First of all, 2-part question. 1, how are the Dodgers going to do next year? We've been waiting a long time
How are the Dodgers
for
going to do next year?
some World Series kind of action. And second, I was I was a DirecTV subscriber, so I couldn't get the Dodgers.
We knew this was
And
coming.
frankly, that sort of turned me off to the Dodgers. So how is that impacted, fans and viewers?
The first part of your question, I will have a definite answer April 1st. Because the new brains that we have at Dodger Stadium told us that there will be changes between now and April 1st. So I think that the names that we have now won't be necessarily the ones that will be the Dodgers for the season. The second part, it is tough. But I will let Jorge answer that because he is more involved in that.
There is nothing I can tell you that's going to make you feel a lot better. However, just real quickly, I will just dovetail on what he said about the team itself and where we are. I don't think that the Dodgers are going to come out directly and say it, but I've heard a lot of talk during the offseason about being competitive. And this team is certainly going to be competitive. It's not like Arizona said, we're in it this year to win it this year. They made significant moves as well. If you look at Andrew Friedman and the history of his success, I'm reminded by a story why Andrew Friedman ended up with the Los Angeles Dodgers. As a young executive for Tampa Bay, we were negotiating to try and get a trade for David Price this year. We did not end up getting David Price. The reason we did not get David Price was because Andrew Friedman knew so much about the Dodger minor league system and all these players that he asked for, who he knew the exact value of, that the Dodgers are saying, how does this guy know about our minor league system? Because Tampa Bay does not have the deep pockets that the Dodgers have had. Therefore, they rely heavily on really being the very best at scouting young prospects and being able to identify talent before they become established stars. And what is happening right now is that the Dodgers are basically doing the same thing. There is a change of philosophy that is taking place internally in our front office. And it's one that is really going to require a little bit of patience, but is going to have great results in the very long run. We did not get any of the big major free agents this year that we were looking for, but the Dodgers all of a sudden have now probably one of the very deepest and best farm systems in baseball. They have a lot of players and a lot of young arms that are going to come up that you're going to hear about this year. Julio Urias, De Leon, to name a few. And we have some a nice mixture with Kazmir and Maeda from Japan, that the Dodgers are going to be competitive and they are going to have a great shot. One of the things you can't control is health. You know, if it wasn't for Ryu last year, it could have been a whole different situation if he hadn't gotten hurt. Ryu's going to be healthy, and I think that Alex Wood is probably going to be the breakout player of the year for the Dodgers. I think they see a lot in him. But anyways, I can go on and on and on. The future is great for the Dodgers as far as they have a chance this year, and it's going to be even better. 17 and 18 are going to be great years for the Dodgers. They will dominate, I believe, for a long time. As far as the television goes, you know, the bad thing is that I think we did misread some things. We depended on Time Warner, on their past experience with the Lakers, to be able to rectify that situation. They knew that they were going to have a problem on their hands with their distribution because they had it with the Lakers and it took a while. But I think this is where DirecTV and everyone decided, here's where we're going to draw the line, and we are not going to budge. And the Dodgers, as much as they would like to, and they took the biggest PR hit in this, more than Time Warner, the Dodgers, because everyone's turning to the Dodgers saying, why don't you force your partner to do something about this? How can you treat us this way? We have been loyal to you, and you're going to allow them to do this to us, your Dodger fan. But if you really look at it, unfortunately, when you get a lot of lawyers involved, the Dodgers got their $8 billion for the deal, and as a partner to Time Warner, they can't dictate to Time Warner, you have to cut a deal with DirecTV. They can say, we want you to cut a deal with DirecTV, and we want you to cut a deal as soon as possible and make this problem go away, because you can make a lot of money. And I believe it would have been cleared this year had it not been for the fact that all of a sudden, two major partners now were being acquired. Time Warner by Charter Communications. They were going to be acquired by Comcast originally, and Congress said, no, it's too big. Now you're too big. You become too big of a company, monopoly, you can't do it. So that set the clock back even further, made it even worse. Dodger fans are very frustrated now. Now, they were acquired recently by Charter Communications, so that is all unfolding, and I'm hoping that this will be resolved. But the Houston Astros went through this for 3 years as well. It's happened before, and I'm hoping that they'll find a way to get this done sooner as opposed to later. But unfortunately, I can't tell you of anything that's pending that's about to happen that's going to change things. But the Dodgers have their hands tied behind their backs in that regard, unless they were to try and renegotiate a new deal. And I haven't seen that happening in a long time, not for less money, unfortunately. But I think that eventually it'll, but you've heard that before many, 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 many times, unfortunately. But yes.
So we unfortunately are out of time. However, if folks would like to come and say hello to Jaime or Jorge after the event or ask their questions, they'd be happy to take individual questions after. But at this point, I'd like to present both Jaime and Jorge with these tokens of our appreciation.
Well, thank you.
It's been an honor to have you speak here.
You're really having a great audience. From the bottom of my heart, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much for being here tonight. And San Marino is the most charming city in the world, no question about it. And it's a beautiful city. And I would like to congratulate you and the people in San Marino for their efforts to keep our schools where they are, #1. So please keep helping the schools. We need to have great schools here in San Marino, because that translates into many, many positive things. So thank you for helping the schools in particular. Thank you very much, and it was a pleasure for me to be here with you tonight.
Thank you.